Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to this. This is actually the second segment in these videos. My goal is to try and not make them so long. But I have been talking about, our topic for tonight is we're talking about some end time prophetic insights, end time insights. And so in our last segment, one of the things that we covered was Revelations 12:7. Where did this whole issue, when you look at all of the things being played out, when you look at the people being concerned about Bill Gates doing the vaccine that is actually a marker that's going to be on your right hand and on your forehead, and when you hear people talking about end times, when you see the conflict between Black Lives Matter, when you see people in the streets just burning and looting, again, it's not the activity that people are doing, it is the activity is the visual manifestation of a spirit that has been accelerated and released in the earth. Okay, now I've mentioned in the last segment, where did this all begin? So we started the last segment out talking about Revelations 12:7, and there was war in heaven. We talked about the battle between Lucifer and the angels, how Lucifer got kicked out of heaven, God imprisoned him in the earth. So I want to pick up there because we want to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit about the overall spirit that Lucifer pervade, which is also the same spirit that is pervasive in this end time. And then I'm going to talk about that spirit, and then we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and look at this second segment. So the first segment, we looked at where things started. It started with Lucifer. Now, what we're going to talk about in this segment is what got Lucifer kicked out of heaven in the first place. What started the whole thing? So we're going to go to Isaiah 14:12. And why is this important? Because the same spirit that Lucifer operated under that got him kicked out of heaven is the spirit that is the most pervasive spirit in all of the interactions that you see between people. It's the same spirit that compels a police officer to arrogantly try to dehumanize a black person. It's the same spirit that makes a person of whatever persuasion, a person who is of the KKK say, I'm better than you. We're talking the spirit that spirit had a starting point. It had a beginning source. And if you don't understand where the source of a thing comes from, then when that thing begins to influence even your own actions, then you won't know how to respond. You won't understand that you actually have authority as a speaking spirit. You don't even have to be born again. You don't have to know Jesus. You actually have the internal fortitude just because of the way you were created in the image and likeness of God to bring in and reel in your own human nature just using the fortitude that God wired into you. And that's completely separate from having a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's something a human being can do because you're created in the same image and likeness of God. Now, God's desire is not so much to make you a pawn so that you do what he does, everything he says. No, he wants to partner with you, have a relationship with you, walk with you in the cool of the day, fellowship with you. God likes being with you. He likes being with the thing that he created that looks like him. So understanding that, we realize that there is a source of the behavior, a source of the attitude, a source of the mindset. So what is the original mindset that started in heaven that led to Lucifer being kicked out of heaven, which has then led to him being imprisoned on the earth, which then led to him not only being imprisoned here, earth is a penal colony for Satan and his angels. That's what it was. And then God put a warden on the earth, Adam and Eve, and said, I want you to subdue it. I want you to take dominion. I want you to bring everything back into alignment. I have made you, I've given you the same authority that I have. You have the same ability as a speaking spirit in the earth to create. So what was the original spirit, though, that got Lucifer kicked out in the first place? That spirit is what's pervasive. And that's the same spirit that's in operation. It's the same spirit. So once you recognize the source, you have two choices. You can either partner with the mind of God as a part of the kingdom in this last hour and access supernatural capacity for bringing that spirit bringing it into subjection Or you can, even as a human being, utilizing your own human nature. If you don't want to partner with God and you don't want to know Jesus, that's fine. I'm not telling you what you got to do, but I'm just telling you where your power at, okay? You can use your own human power to say, I choose not to step into this mindset and to partner with this attitude and to partner with this spirit. You get to choose. Because in this last hour, as I mentioned in the last video, the birth pains are getting faster. They're getting closer together. And as they come closer together, you will have to have one of those two to survive in this earth. You will have to have the Spirit of God, or you will have to have extreme human fortitude to allow you to survive in this earth. Just saying. You're going to have one or the other. So where did it start? Isaiah 14 verse 12 says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cast down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? So that already tells us that there were nations before this earth was even here. So I'm going to read it in the New King James. It says, how are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations? Isaiah 14:13. For you said in your heart, I will. Okay, so now we're talking about the first indicator. It is the willful choice of pride. I will ascend. Ascend means I'm going to rise up above my own, where I am, and I'm going to step into a higher place. In other words, I'm going to see myself as more important than you. I'm going to see myself as more powerful than you. I'm going to see myself as more significant than you. I am better than you. I'm better than you, and I'm black power, and you just a white person who's been putting down the black people. Or I'm the white person, I'm white, and it's white supremacy. Or I'm a Democrat, and those Republicans are nothing. Or all those Democrats, they're crazy. It's the same spirit. It is a spirit that ascends and accelerates itself over the other. To say, for I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my. I will exalt mine. He says, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. He says, I'm going to exalt myself over God. And so what happens, and what the prevailing spirit that's in operation right now that people are falling victim to, is when you say you are better than anybody else, when you say that you are greater than anybody else, when you say that that Black Lives Matter is more important than Make America Great Again, or when you say that Republicans are better than Democrats, or you say that Democrats are more, when you say all of that, it's the same spirit. It is a demonic spirit. And this spirit is what got Satan kicked out of heaven. It was this attitude and mindset. And in this hour, in this what is known as the last days, this is the prevailing spirit. This, in fact, I have a lot of friends who are gay. I do. And the reason I have a lot of friends who are gay is that I choose not to judge them, and I choose not to to take their lifestyle and say that God said this. Do you realize that sodomy was not the sin that sodomy was not the sin that got Sodom and Gomorrah burned? Do you realize that was not why God did it? Okay, let me not tell you. Let me take you to the Word of God. So we're going to go to the Scriptures. And let's look at what the Scriptures have to say. Because if you understand the source of a thing, you can realize where your power is, because you will no longer be under the influence of a lie. Now, this is what is really important. I even share this with people who are very dear to me. Very dear to me. I tell them, I said, look, I'm going to take you to a passage, and I'm going to share this with you. And what you do with this information is completely up to you. Because God is a big God. God is big enough, bad enough, bold enough, strong enough to communicate with you in a way that you can get it. I don't have to make you understand anything. All I have to do is point you to a source where you can get some light and some insight. And how you choose to use that light to guide your path is completely up to you. But let's look at this verse, okay? Let's look at this verse. We're going to look at Ezekiel 16, verse 49 and 50. Now, if you ever look at, so let me break this quote, I'm going to break this down to you. If you look at the ingredients of something, like let's say for a cake, if a cake has 7 ingredients, if you only use 5 of those ingredients, can you have a cake? You can't. If you use 6 but not 7, can you have a cake? No. You need all of the ingredients to create that cake, right? Let's look at what Ezekiel 16 verse 49 says. Because what we're talking about, let's go, I don't want to get it twisted. I want you to understand the prevailing spirit that got Satan kicked out of heaven is the prevailing spirit that has been accelerated in the end time. It is the prevailing spirit where there is an increased amount of demonic activity. It is the prevailing spirit that has people out in the street saying, I'm going to tear this statue down. I don't care what you say. I'm going to tear this statue down because I don't, and don't even understand that you tearing down the statue of an abolitionist who was there during slavery, setting slaves free. That's how blinding a spirit of pride is. It is so destructive. And that is the spirit that fuels a lawlessness. Now, what is happening in this hour, what you are seeing is a series of events as they unfold in what we are commonly hearing termed as the end times. Now, Ezekiel 16:49 gives us a series of ingredients that led up to an action that God took. So put in the eggs, put in the flour, put in the salt, put in the sugar, put in the walnuts, you put 7 ingredients, okay? It took 7 ingredients to get to a point as to where things had become so out of control that things were so lawless until people were bent on destroying each other. And not only could they destroy each other, but then they could then extend the reach of that destruction and destroy the rest of the planet. That's why God sent the flood. That's why he sent the flood. Because people had become so completely and utterly lawless that it had become so evil and so filled with horrible imaginings and terrible things that he had no choice. Because if he didn't, they were going to destroy each other. And then they were going to... Okay, back to the passage. Ezekiel 16, behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. In other words, this was the thing that got Sodom in trouble with God. The first thing was pride. Now, where did that pride come from? That pride came from, go back to Isaiah 14:12. How have you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? That spirit, I will, verse 14, Isaiah 14:13. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend unto heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will sit in the mount of the congregation on the far side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will. And so that spirit, that prideful, exalting spirit is the thing. That was the first, that's what got Satan kicked out of heaven. It was his arrogance and his decision that I am better than God, I'm bigger than God, I'm both. And it's the same spirit that pits Make America Great Again against Black Lives Matter. It's the same spirit that pits the Democrats against the Republicans. It's the same spirit. And Satan uses that spirit because as long as he can get you prideful and wrapped up in your I will mind, you will never form a unity and be able to create anything. That's why I shared on a post with somebody the other night. She was saying, well, have you read the Black Lives Matter agenda? I said, of course I read it. Well, I don't think you've done your homework. I thought to myself, I almost called her something, but I try to stay right. I ain't always right, but I try to stay right. But what I told her was, look, what you focus on, I'm a speaking spirit and a creative force in the earth. I'm not going to focus my energy on explaining to you why I don't have to partner with an agenda that's inconsistent with the kingdom that I'm a part of. Just like if I live in Beverly Hills, I don't need to worry about somebody who lives down in South Central LA. Because if I don't live in South Central LA, I'm not going to worry about going down to South Central LA. Why? Because I don't live down there. But now if South Central LA come up to Beverly Hills and start trying to burn down some stuff, we got a problem. Because that's where I live. I live in the kingdom of the Most High God. I am seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus. Now, as long as Black Lives Matter does an agenda, as long as they stay down there where they at, working their plan, and it's not conflicting with where I live up here in the kingdom, we're going to be just fine. But the minute you cross the parameters and you enact an agenda that's going to begin to influence what happens up here in Beverly Hills, I got to say something. I got to say something. I cannot be silent. I must speak forth this truth. I must speak forth this gospel. Now, I know it will probably eventually get me in trouble. And you know what? So be it. Because that's what God said would happen in the last days. It's par for the course. So here's what I tell people. Number one, what was the number? So we understand that it was the I will spirit. It's the I will that says, defund the police. It's the I will spirit that will put a bystander in the face of a police officer who's doing his job, who's trying to protect things that people are paid hard-earned tax dollars for. Tearing down stuff, burning people's houses. It is the responsibility of the police to protect people against the spirit of lawlessness. Okay? So now we understand where that spirit came from. Now that spirit that Lucifer had in Isaiah 14:12, you can read Isaiah 14:12 all the way down to around verse 17. You see the account of what Satan's mindset was that got him kicked out of heaven and removed from the presence of God. He was then imprisoned on the earth. It was the I will spirit. And it was that same spirit that became pervasive in Sodom and Gomorrah. So when people talk to people who are gay, who are homosexual, and say, just because you're a sodomist, God, you're going to hell. That's a lie. That is not what's going to send a person to hell. And you can't say that any more than the preacher who's sleeping with the secretary. Then you can say, because anything that separates us from the God, separation occurs in the heart. There are people whose heart is after God who still have areas in their life that they are contending with. God works with people where they are. And and this is what I tell people who are very close to me. I said, I can't tell you how to do your life, but I will always love you. I will fight for you. I will stand for you. I will pray for you. I will hold your hand when you are sick. I will be there to put my arm around you when you need me, because that's who I am. And many of my gay friends will tell you, that's who Stella is. I don't make it known. I don't tell about it, because it ain't everybody's business who my friends are. But I will stand with them. Why? Because God loves them as much as he loves me. And many of them will be found in heaven before a lot of the preachers in the pulpit preaching this gospel. Because what they don't understand is the leading ingredient that separates, the thing that separated Satan from God was his pride. And so if you go back over to Ezekiel 16:49, you see the iniquity that separated Satan from God was pride. And then the next thing was fullness of bread. More than you need. You got all that you need. Stuff piling up. You got so much stuff. In fact, periodically I try to go through my house. I know there have been times I invite people over to come on, just go through my house. I walk through my house. You want that? Oh, I love this here. You can have it. Take it. Take this. Why? Because fullness of bread was one of the issues in Sodom. And it says an abundance of idleness. When you got people in the streets, that's what happens. When you give people $600 a week that they ain't got to do nothing for. Abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters. Now here's the other one. This is really a big deal with God. Neither did she strengthen the hands of the poor. So God is really concerned about what happens to poor people. He's concerned about those who are poverty. Why? Because he doesn't want you to necessarily give stuff to poor people, but he wants you to strengthen their hands, to enable their ability and their capacity to break free from poverty. Because poverty is a curse. It's a curse. Now I got a video on there. So let's look at why was God pissed off at Sodom? He was not pissed off at Sodom and Gomorrah because of sodomy and homosexuality. He was pissed off because of what led up to. This was the mindsets and the attitudes that were pervasive in that atmosphere. So when you judge people for their lifestyle, You need to judge yourself for your religious pride. You need to judge yourself for your black pride. You need to judge yourself as the first lady. I'm first lady. Got people toting your, got people toting your books to the podium. Give it up. Give me a break. Tote your own Bible. Put on a uniform because it's pride. If you have a stack of books that you're going to give away, I can see it. But just to have somebody walk before you all formally and set your Bible on the podium, and you stand there all pietous. Oh, come on, folks. If that ain't pride, I'm just being real. It's the same pride. It's the same pride. And that's the pervasive spirit that's in operation behind the spirit of lawlessness. That's the spirit that says, I have the right to tear down this statue. I don't care what you say. I have the right to burn down your business because I'm mad. It's the same pride that Satan says, I will extend my rights and my values and my beliefs over you, God. It's the same spirit. That's why I tell my gay friends, I'm sorry. I can't celebrate gay pride. I don't celebrate gay pride, black pride, white pride, KKK pride, the Black Lives Matter pride, whatever, religious pride, first lady pride, all of that. I don't have nothing to do with pride. Why? Because pride is the one thing that separated an entity from the God who created him. Pride and the decision to ascend yourself over another, to usurp another human being's value, and to place your value higher than theirs. And so what I say to my friends in that community is, I say, look, I love you. I love you. I'll fight for you. They may not mess with you. I'm here for you. I will pray for you. And you come up against situations and circumstances that you can't handle, you call me. I will go to God on your behalf because I love you. I love you, Jeff. I love you. I love you, Keith. I love you. Y'all know who you are. I love you. I love you, Eric. I love you, Jonathan. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will love you, and I will pray for you, and I will stand with you. I will stand with you. And my prayer for everyone on this planet, gay community, straight community, religious community, people who go into church and still don't know God, fornicating community, blind community, sick community, people who have infirmities because of attitudes and mindsets. My prayer for all of us, is that we have a whole soul. So if you look, neither did she strengthen the hands of the poor and needy. And then Ezekiel 16:50, and they were haughty. Haughty is when I'm like, I don't think so. They better not come over here. They better not ask me for nothing. Better not. I'm tired of her and all them cheering. Got 4 kids. She ought to stop having babies. That's a haughty spirit. You don't know what led her to being broken. You don't know the story about how her stepfather molested her from the age that she was 9. You don't realize that the fact that she has children is because 2 of the children were by men who raped her, and she kept the babies. You don't know. And that haughty spirit is the one thing that we don't want to admit. A lot of religious people, churchy people, we just look at folks and say, girl, she just needs to stop having babies. No. We need to figure out why and help her understand that there's a place in you that needs to be made whole. And let's help her find the source of healing and get that place whole. And then once you heal the broken space, then you're in a position to get ready. And so after God goes through all of those things, the very last things he said was, and committed abomination before me. It's the last ingredient. All of that things, pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hands of the poor. Neither did she have a concern about the needy. They were haughty, and then they committed abomination. All of those, why do you think, if you look at it, why do you think God gave Abraham so many? He said, Abraham, find 50. Find 70 people who are not full of pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness, don't care about the needy, don't care about the poor, who are haughty. Find me some people like that. That's why. That's why. And so if you look at what happened before, now, so let's step away from Sodom. Let's go to Noah. Now, why is this important? Because the same spirit that brought Sodom to that place was the same spirit that brought the flood upon the earth. And it is the same spirit that is bringing the lawlessness and the acceleration of birth pains in this end time, because the source of that spirit realizes and recognizes that his days are short. His time is coming to a close. His time. And what God is saying is, I am here to help all of my people, everybody that I love. He said, I love the gays, I love the straights, I love the black people, I love the white people, I love the Chinese, I love the Arabs, he says, I love all of you. And what I am endeavoring to do right now is, he says, I love you so much that I am pouring out my spirit upon this earth. I'm about to wash this globe with the overwhelming goodness of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I'm about to flood this planet, and anybody who wants to experience and encounter, all you have to do is call upon the name of the Lord, and you shall be saved. He didn't say you had to be straight. He didn't say you had to be. He did not put any contingency upon it except call upon the name of the Lord. He says, confess with your mouth that Jesus died for me. Believe in your heart that he died for me. That's all. And then when you do that, it opens the door for Jeremiah 24:7. So let's look at what that happens. Because once God is God. He's big enough. He's bold enough. He's bad enough. He is the omnipotent, all-sufficient, all-creative force of the universe. Once he has an inroad, he can take it from there. He just needs your permission to get access to the places in our hearts that are broken. All of us are broken. All of humanity, for all have sinned. Sin is not an act, it's a condition. Sin is not an activity, it's a condition. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And so if you shift your thinking from the activities that people are under and realize that it's a condition, and the only cure for the virus of sin is the blood of Jesus. It's the universal cure for all human brokenness. And so now we understand. Don't stop telling people who are gay, lesbian, transgender. Stop telling them you're going to hell. The devil is a lie. God, you don't see anywhere in Scripture. God says the only thing that can separate you from God. Let's look at the evidence in the Scriptures. What separated Satan from God in heaven? It was the spirit of pride. So what I tell everybody, I said, look, this is what I want you to do. I said, I love you, okay? And God does too. And here's what he's giving you. He's giving you an invitation to connect with him. And so he'll give you that invitation. So number one, say, Lord, I humble myself. God, I realize there are areas in my life that are broken. And I know there are things in my life that don't please you. And you know the reason I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you my own story real quick because, I got to keep this short. Because I remember when I was with my son's father. I remember in that season of my life when I knew I had to make a break. I had to make a choice. But I'm telling you, I'm going to just be straight. The sex was so good. It was just so good. I hate it. Can I be real? Can I break it down? I needed help from God to break that pattern because it was detrimental to me. It was detrimental to him. It was detrimental to my son. I needed to retain my relationship with God because that's what was going to help me get through all of the difficulties that I knew were going to be coming down the road for me. And what I'm saying to you is, it is important for you and I to understand that you have to realize you're going to need help from God. You, over these next birth pains, when a pain hits, now you thought coronavirus was rough. Yeah. You thought the lockdown was rough. Yeah. You thought the riots was rough. Let me tell you, folks, the birth pains get harder as you get closer to the end. They get harder. You will need help from God. I don't care what your persuasion is. So humble yourself. So the first thing I tell all people, everybody, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. Ask God, say, God, I need your help. Just start right there. God, I need your help. I need your help. Forget my lifestyle, forget my mistakes, forget my failures, forget all of that. I just need your help. Start right there. Humble yourself enough to acknowledge that you need his help. And then he will do the rest, because I love Jeremiah 24:7. Let's go there. Oh, it's already up. Jeremiah 24:7. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is what God does. And I will give them a heart to know me. So God is saying, look, if you give me permission, I'll give you a heart to want to know who I am. I'll do that. I'll do that in you, for you, through you, and to you. He'll do it. Just give him, humble yourself and say, hey, God, I need your help right where I am. Black Lives Matter, Make America Great Again, Democrats, Republicans, gays, lesbians, straight, everybody. That's all. Start there. Let's start there. Why? Because what God says, I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people. I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. Now I'm going to close with this, because that word return, it did not say some of them would return. It didn't say some people could return, because what many people don't realize is that every human being is sourced in God. In him, he is in all things. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made. You and I are an expression of who God is. There is a piece of God that God took out of himself and put into me, and that as I walk out who I am and my identity, I get to express who I am. So when he says they will return to me, he's saying you're just coming back to the source that created you. And so that's the spirit of lawlessness. So let's recap. Oh God, man, I'm over time. So I'm not going to recap. I'm going to do one more segment tonight. So we understood. We started segment 1, Revelations 12:7, where it all began. Satan got kicked out of heaven, and we talked about why. We talked in this segment to a great extent about the same spirit that got Satan kicked out of heaven is the spirit that is pervasive in our daily interactions. It's the spirit behind police that put his knee on George Floyd's neck. It's the same spirit. That was the spirit of pride. He says, I'm better than you. I have the right to take your life because you're less than me and I'm more than you. That's a spirit. It's a demon. It's a spirit. And that spirit of lawlessness and murder behind every other entity, there is a source behind it. And the source, iniquity, is pride. Pride. So we went from there to Jeremiah. We ended up in Jeremiah 24:7. So if we are all willing to relinquish our pride and set it aside, God has already said, look, I will give you a heart. If you just humble yourself and invite me to connect with you, I will give you a heart. I'll put in you what you need to connect with me. I'll put back who you were before you landed in this body and your daddy raped you. I'll put back who you were before your granddaddy got drunk and raped his daughter and got pregnant with you, and the family treated you evil all this time because they know where you came from. I'll fix the person you were. I will take you back to the person you were. Only God can do that. For they shall return unto me with their whole heart. In other words, he'll take all those broken pieces and he'll fix it and make you whole. That's what he does. That's who he is. So we're ending this segment with Jeremiah 24:7. What's the initial iniquity? Pride. What's causing all the lawlessness, the tearing down statues, the fighting between the Democrats, the Nancy Pelosi can't work with Donald Trump, Donald can't work with Nancy, all of the confusion, the media, all of this, it's all a spirit of pride. Pride formulates all other sins. It is the original sins that says my attitudes rights, values, who I am is more than you. We saw a manifestation of that is where we saw it first played out is in Isaiah 14, chapter 14, starting at verse 12, where we see the original manifestation of that attitude and that mindset was in Satan when he said, I will this, I will that, I will. His willful acceleration of himself over God. And the willful acceleration of any human being over another is sourced in pride. And that was the initial sin that really got Sodom destroyed. And it was really the original sin that got the earth flooded. Yeah. It's sourced there. It's the beginning. So now that we understand that, and we see where things came from, and we see what God is endeavoring to do, now we need to understand there are things I need to do. There are things I need to understand that are a part of the end times timeline. Now that you know that, and you realize that God is, hey, I want you to understand what it takes to reconnect with me, because you're going to need him. Just saying. You're going to need him. We'll wrap up. We're going to do one more segment tonight. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a short break, upload this video, and then I will be right back with the final segment after this.